Hey guys, what is going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, bringing you my review for Gungrave VR, the loaded Coffin edition. Developed by Iggymob and released on PSVR this December 7th in the EU and December 11th in North America. This was reviewed on a PS4 Pro and will be selling at an estimated price of $40. Of course, that depends on your region. The beloved action series returns after a 14-year slumber. Gungrave VR thrusts players into the chaotic world of South City, where they'll have to master different playstyles to take down enemies. Free-moving third-person shooter levels pit Grave against mobile enemies and tough-as-nails bosses. The loaded Coffin edition is comprised of both the first chapter and the second, Gungrave UN. Gungrave originally released back on the PS2, and it's back in VR. But was it worth the wait? Let's find out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for updates, hit that bell icon. And remember, if you want to see more PSVR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Twitter and Facebook. As always, graphics are up first. Gungrave VR won't win any awards for graphics, that's for sure. With its visuals looking almost copied right out of the PS2 version, Gungrave VR pretty much only brings a sharper and cleaner visual polish to the table. Sometimes almost having a cel-shaded look, Gungrave certainly isn't the pixelated and jagged game of old. However, textures, effects, and animations remain largely unchanged from the original, giving Gungrave a decidedly retro throwback feel. Some may enjoy the familiar aesthetic, but for me, I expect better for a modern VR game, and here Gungrave just feels like a lazy port with reskinned levels. The first-person train stages spice things up a bit and feel less dated, however, they too lack any imagination, and fortunately do not overstay their welcome. Grave himself admittedly looks pretty awesome, and while his animations are harsh and abrupt, it was pretty cool to watch him dual wield and pull off his famous charge attack that so obviously was the inspiration for the Reaper character's finisher in the Overwatch series. Unfortunately, the rest of the enemies are bland and forgettable like the rest of the visuals in Gungrave. And that brings us to sound. Gungrave VR sounds, like its visuals, are a retro throwback to the PS2 era Gungrave, and for me just seem lazy and dated here in VR. Music here is made up of only a handful of tracks, all of which are of the 90s game rock variety. You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't help then that the music is much too high in the audio mix, and as a result drowns out the game's effects. Sounds like visuals are again very much ripped out of the PS2 era and lack the audio fidelity and clarity we now have been accustomed to. Gun sounds, voice work, and explosions all only sound okay, and while a part of me does enjoy the comfort food aspect of the retro sound bits, they still come off as sounding muddy and weak. Retro or not, it is ultimately the sound mix that fails Gungrave the most, and while there are a few nice uses of 3D audio to give you some directional awareness of attacks, it's just not enough to give much praise here. Gameplay is up next. Gungrave the Loaded Coffin Edition is comprised of two chapters, Gungrave VR and Gungrave UN, also in VR. Both can be purchased separately and both clock in around the 1 hour mark for gameplay length and are comprised of about 6 chapters each. The first chapter is primarily made up of the third-person run-and-gun style that the PS2 version consisted of. Each stage is simple in structure, having you walk around a very short area taking on waves of dumb enemy AI, concluding in a boss fight of similar intellect. Action here is simple, arcade, third-person gameplay, and you've all played this countless times. You are equipped with 2 pistols, both with unlimited ammo and a cooldown function. Alternatively, you have your casket melee attack that can also be used to deflect incoming fire, and a jump roll to avoid attacks. This simple gameplay has its charm and can be a bit of simple fun, but it is hindered greatly by the inclusion of a forced click turning when spinning the camera around to see incoming attackers. This made looking around a chore, to the point of me actually looking over my shoulder to avoid this irritation. Controls are simple and accurate here, but again are let down slightly by shoddy hit detection and a lack of overall combat polish. Combat itself is incredibly easy on normal difficulty, so I recommend playing on a harder difficulty the first time around, since I am doubtful many will feel compelled to play this through again. The first chapter mixes things up a bit, with a first-person shooting stage on top of a fast-moving train. Here, Gungrave does feel a bit more modern with a touch of light gun arcade shooting type action. Unfortunately, it gets boring quickly, and chooses to forego the expected move support in favor of locked pistols to head tracking. The UN chapter is basically comprised of the exact same gameplay mechanics, graphics, and sound, but opts for a side-scroller perspective similar to that seen in Bloody Zombies, another side-scrolling brawler in VR. This change in perspective adds some variety to the mix, but ultimately grows old quickly. As Grave has all the same attacks, in this changed perspective, gunplay devolves into a spray and pray situation, as players simply look left and right, mowing down incoming attackers. This dumbed down version of the already simple combat found in the first chapter makes for an even easier push and a shorter experience overall. Gungrave, the Open Casket Edition, is played using only the DS4 controller and can be played seated. Motion sickness shouldn't be an issue, and a minimum amount of space is required. And finally, that brings us to fun factor, my final review. Gungrave is no doubt about it a retro throwback to the PS2 era game of the same name. Fans of retro gaming may find a lot here to love, but for those looking for a new experience in VR, you are likely to come away disappointed by the graphics, sound, and gameplay. Honestly, this game benefits very little by being in VR, and with the exception of it being all around you, it rarely capitalizes on VR in any meaningful way. As you know, I hate number scores and instead rate games based on a scale of buy, wait for a sale, or burn it to the ground. This is a deep sale, and almost a burn it to the ground for those looking for an awesome VR experience. This game is simply too derivative of the old PS2 game in almost every way, and is also grossly overpriced for what it has on offer. Even for those who love the first game and still enjoy some retro gaming, wait for a sale, as $40 is just too rich for 2 hours of gameplay with almost no reason to replay it. And that's it for me, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more PSVR content from me, please consider subscribing. And for updates, hit that bell icon. And of course, remember, if you want to see more PSVR news and info, check Shughead Gaming out on Twitter and Facebook. I'll catch you guys in my next video.